Hi knitters, Mindy of MinuetKnit here with my Frabjous Fibers and Wonderland Yarns Tweedledee-Dum base in the colorway Bread and Butterfly. Very cute little whimsical name. And today I am going to show you how to bind off Purlwise. I will show you using both the English and Continental knitting methods so that no matter how you knit, you will understand the tutorial. So for starters, whenever we are binding off Purlwise, we need our yarn in front, just like when we purl. So the first thing I am going to do, so I've got my yarn set up Continental right now, I'm going to purl the first 2 stitches. If you purl English, go ahead and do that. Okay, whoops, sorry, a little wild here. Now I've got these 2 stitches. Notice that my yarn is still in front. Just like when we bind off knitwise, I'm going to take the prior stitch, bring it over the one I just worked. Okay. So now I've bound off 1 stitch. Now for those who knit English, I'm going to show you how I do the same thing. So continuing on, if you're Continental knitter, purl the next stitch. Okay, so whenever we're binding off, we'll have 2 stitches at most on our right hand needle in basic bind offs. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab that stitch, bring it off and over. Okay, go ahead and purl again, wrapping your yarn around that front needle from right to left, over and out the back. Okay, and your yarn stays to the front. And you bring your stitch off and over. Now if you notice, I am not working my stitches tightly. One of the biggest downfalls of anyone's cast off or bind off is that they pull their stitches really tight and they end up with cinched work. You always, unless otherwise instructed, but almost all patterns will tell you, bind off loosely so that you get still a nice stretch with your fabric. The last thing you want is for your fabric to be able to stretch and your cast off to be so tight that you can't fit your arm through your sleeve or your hand into your mittens. We really want to make sure we're not binding off too tight. So I'm going to go back to my most comfortable method here, but basically I'm going to purl a stitch, pass the previous stitch over and off of the needle. And you're going to work all the way across like this until you're down to the last 2 stitches. So let me get there with you. I've got 20 stitches cast on. I've got these big, huge needles because this yarn is a bulky weight, so I'm a little slower. I don't often knit with very large needles. I find myself knitting fingering weight and sport weight most of the time, but I really enjoy this yarn. It makes for a nice, solid, warm garment. In fact, as I look at this, this would make a dreamy boot cuff or a nice pair of winter mittens. So I'm trying to speed along here. If you've already got your stitches cast off, you can go ahead and forward to the end. Oops, split my ply. There we go. Just about there. 4 more stitches to go. So now I'm going to pass the stitch over. That leaves me with the last 2 stitches. I am going to purl the last stitch and I'm going to pass this stitch over. That leaves me with 1 stitch. And from there, I'm just going to, you can do this more than one way. Let me show you the easiest way. We're going to make that loop nice and big. Get my needle out of the way here. And I'm going to grab the tail and just bring it through, pulling that closed. And then I would cut my yarn so that I can weave in the end. But there you have it. There's a Purlwise bind off. Happy knitting, everyone.